Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Music, Money, and Life podcast. As always, this podcast is brought to you by howtolicenseyourmusic.com. That is my website. If you are a songwriter, if you're a musician, if you write music of any sort, and you're interested in learning how to license your music in television shows, films, video games, and so on, go check out my website, howtolicenseyourmusic.com. When you go there, there's a place to enter your name and email. And when you sign up on my newsletter, I'll send you a free ebook and a free video right away all about how to make money licensing your music in TV and films. Today, I have a special guest. I have Jason Greenberg from Soundscape Media with me. Soundscape Media is a Canadian-based music licensing catalog. And I've worked with Jason off and on for a couple of years now. Jason has helped several artists that I work with. He's successfully placed their music in a couple different Canadian TV shows. And Jason was kind enough to agree to come on my podcast today and have a conversation about music licensing and how musicians can better prepare themselves to get started licensing music. And we got cut off. We were talking a few minutes ago, but one of the things we were talking about, Jason, was what musicians can do prior to even sending someone like you their music. And we were sort of talking about the fact that, you know, once a songwriter connects with someone like you and they submit music to you and you accept it, there's not a whole lot they can do at that point. So we were talking about some of the things musicians can do to better prepare themselves prior to getting to that point. So if you can kind of jump in there again, Jason.
Okay. Well, I guess the best place to start would be to look into the webpage of the company that you're going to be submitting music to, and find out what they're working on these days. Most sites have, a credits page, or showing what types of projects they've been working on, what types of shows, what types of movies, whatever it might be. So that's a great place to start, because some libraries or licensing companies focus on, say, corporate video. Some focus on, more non-broadcast, royalty-free type stuff. Some focus on TV, some film, whatever it might be, right? So it's important to know, because the music that's used in these different types of scenarios are quite different, right? Yep. So, for example, our page, soundscapemedia.com, we have a link that says our current music needs, right? So anyone can just go on our page. They can look up what we're looking for at any time. We update it every once in a while. Whenever we get a new TV show or something, we update it so that we get relevant submissions that is the type of music that we're going to be using. We have a pretty large catalog, and we generally find music from within our catalog, but there are times when we're looking for music that's kind of different, or kind of not the norm, or not something that we generally carry, and then we would update our webpage and put on this information on the webpage so people can come and check it out and see what we're looking for at any time.
Sure.
We generally don't send out emails anymore. We used to do that unless we really need something. We'll send out an email to everyone saying, okay, we're working on the show, we need something like this. And that, sometimes we do that, sometimes we don't. But it's important to really know what the libraries are looking for, what kind of projects they're working on. Because, we do have a lot of artists, and about 10% of the artists that we have are getting the majority of all the licenses, because it's mainly because of the music that they're submitting. And one big tip that I can give is not to just crank out music, not to write music really quickly and try to just make it a numbers thing, trying to, just make as much music as you can and then send it out, because music licensing has become very, very competitive.
Sure.
And there's a lot of libraries, there's a lot of music out there, and, everyone's online, and it's become a global market now, and it's really important to create something that stands out. Create something that's a little bit different. It's important to follow the trends, to know what what's happening with music these days, not just with popular music, but with underground music as well, and write something that's really well done, like crafted, artistic. Spend some time on it. Don't write several tracks a day. Right? Spend a week on a track. Make it really great, and that will make it push it ahead in search engines. Make it more available for clients that are looking for these types of music. We have a lot of composers that just have thousands of songs. Some of them, like I just don't know how anyone can make that much music and for it all to be good. It's generic sounding, and that's a huge thing. It needs to be good. And if you spend a month on a song, fine. If that's what it takes, there are production libraries, royalty free, and libraries that have very low rates and whatever that do carry a lot of that type of stuff, and that could get licensed for certain things. But I guess it depends on the library, and we mostly focus on TV and film, and it's very competitive, and it needs to be great. It needs to really be good.
Yeah, no, it seems like in my experience, the artists that are cranking out hundreds and even thousands of tracks are doing more, sort of quote unquote production music where, right, like you said, they're not necessarily making a lot of money per license, but through high volume, they're able to, to create decent revenue. But I agree. Like in my experience, the artists that I know that are making, thousands of dollars per placement tend to be artists that have something a little more unique to offer. Is right. Is that pretty much what you're saying? Like the 10% of artists that you work with, is it strictly vocal music, or are these also instrumental artists?
No. We license a lot of vocal music, but the majority of stuff that we license is instrumental. It's mostly for TV shows that have music going, throughout, not kind of reality shows, travel shows, travel documentaries, stuff where there's just wall-to-wall music. There's a lot of those kind of lower budget shows coming out now that are licensing all their music. The higher budget shows will generally hire a composer to write the music, and then they'll just license the songs, maybe a couple tracks.
Yeah.
And those are extremely competitive to get, and those are generally bands that are getting those types of things. Bands that just write music, for CDs and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that that's what we're looking for. We of course love that kind of stuff, but production music could also be music that's just well crafted and instrumental.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Most of our licenses are not vocal, so it just has to be well made. It has to sound good. It has to have good quality. It should be mastered. That's another important thing. If you don't want to spend the money having it professionally mastered, which is fine, just get a plugin, a good limiter plugin, and just run your tracks through it just to get some volume and, EQ it a little bit. That's really important because when people are previewing tracks on our search engine, there's some great tracks that are just really low volume. And, some of them, they just pass the client by because when they're listening, it's a psychological thing. Like you hear a track that's loud and it seems like the quality's better, but that's not the case. It's just something, and then you hear the next track and it's really low.
Right.
And they don't always go turn their volume up. If they turn their volume up, it'll sound as good or better than the track before. But they should all be similar volumes. That's a really important thing because definitely clients will pass right through tracks that sound really low volume because it gives them the perception that this song is bad quality and it's not mastered or it's not produced well. But the content could be amazing, right? And we get a lot of submissions that the content is great, but the recording quality or it's not mastered, that really hurts it. So it's definitely something to keep an eye out for.
So would you say what separates like you said, there's about 10% that get most of the licenses versus the 90% that don't? Would you say it's more content or more? It sounds like it's more production. Is that sort of what separates the really good stuff from the stuff that doesn't get picked up as much?
It's definitely a combination of both.
Yeah.
The content must be there. That's really important. Some kind of originality is really important. If someone's just looking for I don't know, a country song or something. It could be, we have lots of country songs, but they might want something that's a little bit different, a little bit modern, or a little something that, we license mostly electronic, indie rock, post rock, ambient, down tempo, electro, that kind of stuff, and that stuff's it's very kind of cutting edge, and that's the stuff I personally do myself. So, and this is how, like, our kind of first clients that we got when we started way back, they kind of connected with what we're looking for, with what they were looking for, with what we do. So they knew that we could understand what they're looking for. They're looking for, right? So it's definitely important to have a bit of an edge, and generic music is in huge supply. If you're just looking for a basic, orchestral track, or a basic country track, or a basic, whatever, just something that's generic, it's really easy to find. But when people are looking for something a little bit different, a little bit new, a little bit something that's in the trends right now, that's happening, right? Like there's for commercials, for example, there's this whole indie thing going on. It's been around for a while, with the claps and the glockenspiel and all that kind of stuff, and that's been the trend in kind of upbeat, happy kind of commercials. But now it's starting to change a little bit more. It's going a little bit more post rock. It's going a little bit more indie, with indie rock kind of guitar kind of stuff, and definitely a huge trend towards electronic music, with electro kind of things, dubstep and all that kind of stuff. You're seeing that all over the place now, right? So even like mixing that with orchestral music could make a huge difference. Like there's people, like there's composers. A lot of our guys are composers, and they might not be great at doing that kind of stuff, but mixing it with what they do well could also be a great thing. Taking something orchestral and adding some type of electronic elements to make it stand out a little bit. That makes a huge difference, because it sounds modern. Yeah, I know guys want that.
No, that totally rings true. I mean, what you're saying really echoes what I say to a lot of clients I work with, which is, it really comes down to supply and demand. And like you said, there's a ton of like generic production music. There's a huge supply of that. So obviously that stuff isn't going to get picked up as much. So with that said, I mean, do you think writers should sort of consciously chase trends? I mean, I kind of go back and forth. Like I usually advise, like, just do what you do it as good as you can do it, and then kind of pitch your music and see what happens, as opposed to constantly trying to hop on the latest bandwagon.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you should be just following the trends. I'm saying you should know the trends, know what's happening, but have a specialty that you do best, or even 2 or 3 specialties that you do well. Yeah. And try to develop those crafts in those, like your chops. Try to find the right samples, to find the right sounds. Just get your palette of sounds together that really work well in those types of music, but really know it well, and then follow the trends and mix them together, fuse them. You get a lot of composers, they'll have their jazz song, they'll have their rock song, they'll have their classical song, and it'll just be generic, right?
Yep.
It definitely, you need to find specialties. You need to find what you do best, what you relate to, what you like, and then adapt it to kind of broaden that range a little bit, so it can fit more areas.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I sometimes have artists who sign up with my music marketing company who will send me like 200 tracks with a little bit of everything, a little bit of jazz, a little bit of grunge, a little bit of rock, a little bit of metal, and it's kind of confusing to know where to kind of categorize those artists.
Yeah, and we have a lot of bands that send us music, and generally those bands will do one style, and they'll do it well because that's all they do, right? And it won't compare to, say, a composer's well-rounded palette of types of songs, because they'll just try this, and then they'll try that, and they'll try that, and that's fine. That's how I started. I studied film scoring, and that's how I started writing, trying everything out. But that's a way to start in the early stages, but then figure out which of those you enjoy doing the most, which of them you really love, and then focus, and then kind of pick a couple pathways and then follow those pathways.
Yep.
Try to bring it down to a more manageable variety of styles. 2, maybe 3. I wouldn't say more than that. And do those styles well. It takes a long time to develop a good sample palette, a good, like when you're writing, say in your sequencer and you're gathering your sounds together, whether you create your own sounds, which is great, or if you, say buy, sample packages and then adapt them to, to your own, to make them your own, add effects and stuff and save them. It takes a long time to develop a good palette so that you have original sounds that you pull on, like as you're writing, you just kind of load them up and they're ready to go. Once you're at that point when you have a great palette of sounds, then you can start working much faster. And that's something I definitely recommend is spend a lot of time with your sounds. Create a good palette of sounds that you can draw from quickly. And that will make your whole writing process quick and easy. Not easy, but quick and
easier.
Efficient. So yeah, that's definitely something to think about.
Okay, no, those are great tips. I want to shift gears slightly, and so from a songwriter's perspective, my whole goal with my website is to teach people how to really maximize their licensing income to the extent that they can. But let's say someone signs with a company like yours. Like I signed a few of my songs to you a couple months ago. And so that's always kind of a cool feeling when you sign with a new company and someone takes interest in your music. But then after that point, like we talked about before, there's not a whole lot for me to do. I'm obviously not going to email you and bug you every week to see like either you've found a buyer for the music or you haven't. So in the meantime, what do you recommend to writers like me and my subscribers? Is it a good idea to cast a really wide net and place your music with as many libraries as you can, or do you think it's more about cultivating relationships with a few select libraries? What's your take on that?
Well, I guess that depends on on the artist and what they do and what they're looking to do, what their goal is. There's guys that do production music and for that kind of stuff, definitely it's good to just get it out all over the place. But there's also things are changing in the music licensing industry, as far as non-exclusive music is kind of on the way down, and exclusive music is more on the way up because there's just a flood of music. Music supervisors are getting flooded with non-exclusive libraries that have the same music that are all sending it to them, and it's just becoming an administrative nightmare for music supervisors. So if you're in a band, for example, and you're more of just creating music in a certain style, you might want to find a single exclusive company or spread your music out with several exclusive companies that are along the kind of pathway that you want to go with your music. They're working on the types of projects that you can see your music being in. Or if you do want to stay exclusive or non-exclusive, you might not want to send it to, say, it depends what you're doing, right? If you're a band, for example, you might not want to send it to, say, royalty-free libraries because a lot of libraries don't want to carry artists that have their music in other libraries or licensing companies that are very cheap pricing, because they don't have any leverage when they're trying to pitch a company with their songs. The company likes the song, and then you try to get a decent price, and then they just do a quick search online and they find another company that's selling it for $40 or something, right? So that's something to think about. It all depends on how you value your music. If you think your music is worth something, you should place it with companies that also that seem like that they value music and they price it fair, right? Because there's so many libraries, and there's libraries that are giving music away for free, and it's something to think about. It's definitely something.
Yeah, no, and that's, again, that's pretty much in line with the advice that I give. But I think at the same time, there's this frustration with songwriters. I've had experiences where one of the first publishers I signed with, like 3 weeks after we did the contract, I had my first placement, and then another one came pretty quickly after, and then a few more. But then there's other companies where you sign with them and nothing happens for 6 months, a year, 2 years. So I think again, it's all about how can you be as proactive as possible in this industry, realizing that, to a certain extent, it is sort of out of the songwriter's hand at a certain point, right?
Yeah, no, it's really hard to gauge that because, we've had artists that have had their music with us for a long period and nothing's happened, and we've had artists that are constantly getting licenses. It all depends on the music. It all depends on what their product is, right? We make all the music available to our clients, and we push the music that fits the project that we're pitching, right? If a client approaches us with a a pilot or a show or whatever it is, a commercial, we help the clients find music. We do have a search engine where they can find it themselves, but we also help put pitches together for clients where to make it easier on them.
Yep.
We're gonna pick the music that fits the project the best, right?
Yeah.
So there might be other great music in the library, but it all depends on what projects we're doing at the time, right? And again, we're mostly doing a lot of indie rock, a lot of post rock, a lot of electronic styles. But of course, there's always the need for other stuff as well. But the guys that are doing that kind of stuff are getting most of the licenses with us. But then you have other libraries that may, for example, focus on classical music or may focus on country music or whatever it might be. And those guys are probably not licensing a lot of electronic and indie rock and stuff like that. They're doing what they do, right? So again, matching up what you do to what a library is working on is a big thing. Right?
Do you know of any? Obviously, my website is one resource, and I'm working on putting together a better sort of section on my website where people can find out about opportunities. But do you have any recommendations other than just going to Google or buying a music licensing directory? I guess one of the other challenges for songwriters is how do they sort through, there's hundreds of companies out there. How do they find companies that they're a good match for? Is it simply a matter of going to websites like yours, checking out what you're actively licensing? Do you have any good resources in terms of how to sort through the barrage?
There's a great site called musiclibraryreport.com.
Yep.
That lists a ton of, I don't know how many, but probably close to 500 to 1,000 libraries and licensing companies and publishers and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a great resource because it's rated by the actual artists and the composers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So they go on and they I'm sure you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you information about each company, if it's exclusive, non-exclusive, or if it what the terms are of their agreement, and then people leave their comments underneath each company. So that's a great resource. And there's a few companies that do similar things, but that's one I've been looking at for a long time. And
okay.
It's a good one, definitely.
Here's sort of a random question, but just something that popped into my head. In the sort of grand scheme of being a professional musician, where do you kind of see licensing fall into the variety of income streams? Like I always sort of encourage writers to pursue licensing, obviously, but also perform and record and tour and to the extent that musicians are able to do all these different things. Where do you think licensing sort of falls into the spectrum of different revenue streams?
Well, I think that sorry, someone just knocked on my.
No problem.
It's okay. Okay, so I think that keeping things diverse is very important. Having as many kind of streets of income, channels of income that you can is really important. If it's definitely a very hard industry, and if you can do a little bit of teaching, a little bit, if you can make some CDs and try to sell CDs, which is becoming not very profitable, but if you can do that as well, that's fine. If you can tour and sell your CDs while you're touring, all of this helps, right? And licensing is definitely a big one because you can make very good money licensing. If you do it right and you devote yourself a good amount of time towards it, you can do very well with it. And that's one of the few remaining streams where you can actually make some real money these days. You know what I mean? Like you definitely you can try to find a record company and try to, get a promoter, booking agent, all that kind of stuff to help. Touring's definitely still a great way to make money, but you have to, it's hard. You can't just jump into it, right? You have to develop a fan base, and you have to, work with a promoter. You don't have to, but it would help if you worked with a promoter that helps to you get your music out there, because people need to know about you before you can really do that kind of stuff. Licensing is something you can just do just by making the music, right? You don't have to have any type of fan base or anything to do it, right? So, when I started, I was a composer, I was a producer, I taught music. I would send my music out to licensing companies. I used to live in LA, and I used to work for a couple libraries there, and just writing. That was kind of back when libraries would just hire composers to write music, and just crank out music, and where they would own everything, right? And that's not really happening much these days. But doing pretty much everything you can, that makes any money, but try to stay in the music industry, right?
Yeah. How much of your own music do you still license these days?
Well, it's still a good amount. I don't really have time to create a lot of new music, but I put out some CDs and stuff, and I still get quite a few licenses. Even not like from Soundscape Media, but also from way back. I sent my music out to like every ton of libraries, and I was just learning about everything, and that was a great way for me to research what's going on in the industry and how everything works. And it's still licensing stuff, definitely.
So what just out of curiosity, what inspired you to create Soundscape Media and transition into running your own library as opposed to just creating music?
Well, here in Toronto, I was noticing, like when I had a 1 year, when I finished Berkeley, and I moved to LA for a year for a practical training visa, and then I came back to Toronto, and I pretty quickly noticed that the trend for licensing was taking away a lot of work from composers. It was just the higher budget shows that were hiring composers, and it was really tough for a new composer to start, right? So I kind of started, venturing into the licensing world and learning about it, and I just decided this seems to be a good avenue to pursue, and I would I started licensing my own music, and I just wrote a lot of music, and then I quickly realized that you need to have a ton of music to satisfy a client, because there's so many styles of music and so many uses that music could be used for. There's so I started the company with a friend of mine, and we've just been pushing forward for the last 7 years, and nice.
So, I was going to ask you when you founded the company. So it's been 7 years you've been in business.
We launched our first. We officially launched in 2007, but we were signing artists well before that, probably since, 2005. And we realized that it does take a long time to find the amount of music that you need to really keep clients happy, and to give, back then there wasn't as much competition. These days there's a ton of competition, and you really have to have a lot of good stuff to open the eyes of any client.
Do you feel like, obviously it's highly competitive, but do you feel like there's a ton of really good, like really high quality music competing for licensing slots, or do you feel like there's also just a lot of mediocre music that takes up people's time because people like you have to sit and listen to all this stuff?
Are you talking about music that's submitted to us, or music that other libraries?
Exactly. Just music. Like on your website, you have a pretty open submission policy. People send you stuff. You obviously have to listen to it to decide whether you accept it or not. I guess what I'm asking is, do you think there's a ton of really, really good music out there, or do you think there's just a ton of music in general?
Well, there's a ton of good music. There's not a ton of really good music, but there's a ton of mediocre music. But the thing is, every client, like certain clients, don't. I shouldn't say don't care, but some clients, you see a lot of bad music on TV,
yeah.
right? And some clients care more about money than they do, the quality of the music. I would say most care most about the quality of the music, and it all depends. If they go to a cheaper library, they're gonna find more mediocre music, but some of it will stick out to be a little bit better. But then if you compare that to another library, it might be nothing compared to the other library. We don't accept the majority of stuff that's sent to us for sure. As we move forward, every year our standards become more strict, and
sure.
we accept less. And we do have both non-exclusive and exclusive libraries, and our non-exclusive library is pretty saturated right now. So we're mainly looking for exclusive music, but of course, if it's great stuff, we're still accepting non-exclusive as well. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that comes in. And as we go, we accept less of it. So
that makes sense. As you grow your catalog, obviously you have to be a little more selective about what you take on.
Right.
Cool. Well, listen, Jason, we are a little over half hour. I know I don't want to keep you too long. We had some technical difficulties before we started this segment of the podcast, so I don't want to keep you all day here. But I really appreciate you doing this. I'm always sort of amazed at how many people accept my invitation to do these sorts of things when there's no real huge benefit to you other than a little extra exposure, I guess. But my point is, I appreciate you taking your time to do this, Jason.
Anytime. I'm happy
so,
to do it.
If people want to learn more about you, do you mind if, I guess we already mentioned it, soundscapemedia.com, if they want to go check out your company?
Yeah. We accept submissions on the page. There's a submit music link. You can check out what's already in the library, and that's a good way to tell. Actually, this is something I should have mentioned before. A good way to know, if your music is a good match for a library is to go into their search engine and search for music similar to what you do, and see if your music measures up to what you're seeing coming back as the results of your search, right? So
sure.
Anyone can go to our page and click on music search. It's an open public search. It's not that you don't need a login to do a search, and you can get an idea of the type of stuff that we have available. Read our frequently asked questions. Check out at the bottom of every page. There's a bunch of links showing our current music needs and stuff like that to learn a bit about what we do before you submit, so if it's a good match or not.
Excellent. So go check out soundscapemedia.com if you're interested. And another thing I like to do, Jason, it's sort of become a tradition with these podcasts, is I like to play a song at the end of the podcast. Can I play one of your songs or one of your artists? Sure. Is there anything that sort of comes to mind that we could just close the podcast with?
Sure. You mean like you want me to email you a song?
Yeah, I would. Exactly.
Okay, sure.
I'd have you send it to me, and then we'll just...
Sure. Well, yeah, I'll give you one of mine then. Sure.
Okay. Do you know which one?
No. Okay. Well, we'll do one called 4 Years. It's a kind of a post-rock electronic kind of mix.
Okay. Cool. So we'll close out with 4 Years, and that's one of your songs, right, Jason?
Yeah, it's an electronic project. I don't really do much anymore, but I used to do, called Repose, and that's off of the newest EP.
Okay, awesome. So Jason Greenberg from Soundscape Media, thanks again for doing this with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and best of luck.
Thank you.